Do you know what illness increased by 47% in the United States in the first half of this decade and is now affecting over 5 million Americans? It's not heart disease and it's not cancer. Find out what will soon affect 10 million baby boomers right now on It's Your Call. Every 70 seconds, someone in this country is diagnosed with a debilitating illness that robs them of their memories and takes away their ability to care for themselves. By 2010, there could be 1 million more cases of this disease. What is it? It's Alzheimer's disease, and it's perhaps one of the most frightening illnesses confronting us today. That's why on this edition of It's Your Call, we're giving you the latest information on it, sharing with you some warning signs, and learning how it's being treated. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you with us. I'm Lynn Doyle, and as a baby boomer myself, I was absolutely shocked to learn that in the next couple of years, at least 10 million of the 78 million boomers in this country will be dealing with Alzheimer's. Already, there are up to 500,000 people under the age of 65 who have early onset Alzheimer's disease or other dementias. So who gets it and why? Can it be prevented? And what happens if you are diagnosed? Well, to answer those questions and more, we've invited Dr. Stephen Arnold, who is the director of the Alzheimer's Disease Center at the University of Pennsylvania, to join us. Dr. Arnold, thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
I was shocked, literally shocked to learn that 10 million of the up-and-coming baby boomers could be facing Alzheimer's. Is that a startling statistic?
I think it is, and I think to some degree it's a measure of the success that we've had, that we're all living longer. 100 years ago, Alzheimer's was a very rare disease. Now that we're all living into our 70s, 80s, the frequency of Alzheimer's is growing tremendously, and it's the price that we have for the success of public health and medical treatment that we have.
Is there a specific part of this generation of baby boomers that is more inclined to get Alzheimer's disease or some other kind of dementia?
Yes, well, we know a lot about Alzheimer's disease now, especially over the last 20 years. There's been plenty of research, and we know some of the major risk factors. Age is, of course, the major risk factor. The longer we live, the more likely that we are to get Alzheimer's disease. And in fact, the figures now are that if you live to your mid-80s, you have a 40 to 50% chance. That means one or two of us sitting around this table will have Alzheimer's disease. Females tend to get Alzheimer's a little bit more than others. Vascular risk factors, things like diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, these are things that also increase your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. And then there's a host of other smaller things. Family history is another. If there's a strong family history of Alzheimer's disease, you may get a higher risk.
So perhaps the most important question that I'm sure the viewers will have is there anything that we can do to prevent it or to avoid it, or is it just one of those things where it's the roll of the dice? If you live long enough, you may actually get it.
Well, I think in some of the risk factors that I just described, there are things that we can't change and things that we can. We can't really change our family history. We can't change our genes. We can't change our age. If we live long, that's a risk factor. We can't change our sex, but we can change certain of our diet habits, our exercise habits. We can protect ourselves from other brain injuries and other things that can contribute to this.
I'm sure that folks are curious about what some of the warning signs are when it comes to Alzheimer's. Is there a list that you could create for us and give us an idea of what we should be looking for?
Well, by far the first and foremost symptom of Alzheimer's disease is memory loss. And so, I want to reassure everyone that everyone as they get into their 50s, 60s has a little bit of forgetfulness, that tip of the tongue phenomena where you just can't get the name of someone that you meet on the street.
What we refer to as a senior moment.
Right, we all have that. That's universal. But when someone is developing more forgetfulness, when they're beginning to forget important appointments, if there certain aspects of their financial management they can't figure out. When the memory or forgetfulness starts to affect your usual functioning, that's when we do become concerned that someone is developing the earliest signs of Alzheimer's.
If someone is showing those particular signs or additional ones, what advice do you give to the viewers?
Well, the first thing to do, I think, is to get a good diagnosis. And you want to see a physician who can screen for some of the other things that actually can look like Alzheimer's disease. There are a range of things that can cause memory problems as we get older. It could be a vitamin deficiency. It could be hypothyroidism if the thyroid gland is underactive. Any number of things. And so you want to make sure that none of those things are occurring, because those may actually be very treatable.
So is in fact there a test specifically for Alzheimer's?
There's no at present, there's no generally accepted test for Alzheimer's disease. It's a clinical diagnosis based on excluding some of these other things that can look like Alzheimer's disease. However, we are well on our way to developing specific tests that actually can rule in or make sure that that is the diagnosis. Certain things like spinal fluid testing, measuring certain proteins in the spinal fluid.
We're going to talk about that later on in the show when we talk about the next treatments. Right now, though, I do want to invite our viewers to be part of our program, because I'm sure that, like me, you have lots of questions. So if you would like to join in with those, you can email us and we will forward your comments to Dr. Arnold. Perhaps these are some of the things that you would be asking, like I am. Do you know the warning signs that we just went over for you? Perhaps a loved one that you're associated with has been dealing with this, or maybe you lost someone to AD, or maybe you just have questions about how to deal with it if someone you know does have it. You can email those questions to us and we will get you the answers that you are looking for. A couple of different ways that you can do it. You can log on to csnphilly.com and then put in It's Your Call or IYC under the search title. That'll take you to my webpage where you can leave that comment, or you can email me directly right here at the show. That's tcn_IYC@cable.comcast.com. As always, you can find us on Facebook, MySpace, or YouTube, and we are going to be sharing some Facebook experiences with you later on and throughout the show. But right now, though, I want to talk about the impact that Alzheimer's has not just on the patient, but also on anyone who loves that patient. Siobhan Gannon is the Associate Director, Branch Offices of the Alzheimer's Association in the Delaware Valley. She sees daily the heartbreak that this disease causes for those who have loved ones affected by it. Siobhan, thank you very much for being with us. We've heard about how we should be looking for warning signs, and we're going to talk about treatment in just a moment, but I didn't want to leave out the impact that AD has on loved ones. You see this every day. Give me an example.
It's just the progressive degenerative disease that it is. The burden grows and grows as the disease progresses. It starts from the memory loss and some of these symptoms that stand out at first, and then it progresses into them not being able to do everyday daily tasks, dress themselves, feed themselves. And so besides all the daily care needs that come into play, there are some challenging symptoms that, as a result of damage to the brain, some symptoms will result, and some of them can be challenging and some can be dealt with if the caregiver's educated enough and understands the disease enough to care for their loved one. How
is a patient who's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's affected by it? Does it sweep over them almost immediately, or is it a gradual deterioration?
It's a bit of both. I mean, the early onset sets in before the age of 65. That tends to progress more rapidly. But on average, individuals live 8 to 12 years with Alzheimer's disease. And everybody's unique, so every progression is unique. So it's hard to say one mold of what your loved one might go through in the process, because it's so different for each person.
I find that interesting, because I didn't realize that each patient has individual symptoms or individual difficulties. I thought that once the diagnosis was made, it was kind of a blanket diagnosis.
Yes, I've given up trying to predict the course of people. In my experience, I've seen some people who are working, they develop some symptoms, and they need nursing care within 2 years. I've seen other people live relatively, full lives